Having a 1 DPS run on bosses not only just saves your time, but it's also satisfying in a way. In this video, I'm gonna show you guys how to build your Keqing so she can do 1 DPS run on bosses and at the same time be very effective at high floors in the Abyssal Moonspire. Just to be sure I don't have the Pyro Elemental Resonance, so that when I show you my stats, it won't be affected by the 25% damage bonus. So now I'm going to show you what increases when you ascend her at first. Just by seeing this, you want to make use of this as much as possible. Why? And that's because she has a really fast attack speed, but not having those high multiplier damages on her skills. At the same time, she deals very fast attacks. Say if you have a very high crit rate and crit damage, she will be very effective on the floor. And because you're using the Black Sword, which gives you a crit rate, you can increase your crit damage by using, if you're lucky, well, substats. If not, then use a crit damage artifact. And now moving on to her stats, she has a 17,880 HP along with 1900 attack. I would say this is a significantly high amount of defense, around, it's almost 1000. And an elemental mastery of 50. So moving on to the details, I have a 42.6% crit rate, which comes from the weapon and most of the substats. But if you don't have that high, don't worry that much because it relies on the RNG of your artifacts. But yeah, moving on, I have a 163.9% crit damage, which is high, and I'm still using a 4-star artifact on my hat. So that means I can go over 170 if I'm using a 5-star crit damage artifact along with a good substat. She also has a high energy recharge on her by default. So you don't really need to max this out that much. If you have a little, that's fine. But I will explain more on why you don't really need to max her energy recharge that much. And last but not least, I have a 15% electro damage bonus, which procs only to her electro damage. And this is the Black Sword. It gives me a 25.1% crit rate at level 80. Only one refinement because you can only refine battle pass weapons once every 40 days. So basically what it does, it gives me 20% damage bonus on my normal attacks and charge attacks. And at the same time, it gives me some sort of lifesteal when I score a crit. So she's also good at her front line. I do have a 5-star weapon on her, but I'm not using her because I don't find physical damage playing at high-end levels that effective on my Keqing because most of her attacks are electro. So yeah, that is why I'm not using this Aquila Favonia on her. Well, which I used to though, but I don't. And that is why I found the Black Sword more effective now, because most of her attacks are electro. Moving on to her artifacts, I'm using a 2-set Thundering Fury, which gives me the 15% electro damage bonus, along with a 2-set Gladiator's Finale, which gives me an attack percentage bonus of 18%. So one thing I wanna say is that attack percentage bonuses, it only procs with your base attack. And I will explain more on that later. But moving on to my flower, which is the Thundering Fury flower, it has a really nice stats. That is the main reason why I'm not using my 5-star, which is level 20, because although it's similar in substats, it gives me more of a crit rate, which I need that. That is why I have a 42%. If I'm not using this, I'll be having only 39% crit rate. And this is my Berserker's Battle Mask. This is the reason why my crit damage is really high. And notice it's still a 4-star, so you can see the potential of a 5-star being applied to Keqing. And especially if you're really lucky enough to be blessed with like 26% crit rate, which is really rare, but it's possible on a 5-star artifact. Anyways, moving on to my goblet. The main reason I'm not using an electro damage bonus, although it's more effective on her, is that I want her to be flexible. I want her to also be durable. By that meaning that I want her to be able to not only deal a high amount of electro damage, but at the same time physical damage. Because let's say at floor 11, it says it gives you 75% electro damage bonus, but at the same time the enemies are electro slime. So let's say you're using Chongyun. I will demonstrate that later, but yeah, she will be more effective by having the attack. Since I'm on level 80 Keqing, I also have a really high base attack, and that's one reason why having my attack goblet still effective on her, since I have a high base attack on her. But still, in the end, it depends on how you want to build her. If you want her fully electro, then you can go with the electro goblet. And not only that, you can go a 4 set of Thundering Fury, which is also really effective on her if you play elemental a lot. So the important thing for you to notice right now is that attack percentage bonuses only procs to your base damage. So you need to have a high base damage for it to be effective. And I'm using an attack goblet, Sands of Eon, because this is the best I've got. Okay, you can't complain. I'm not blessed with these stuff, but at least it gives me that crit damage I need, not like this 5-star. But yeah, that is one reason why I'm using the 4-star, because it has a better substat. Anyways, moving on to my feather. This might be the best artifact substat that I have on my Keqing right now. Gives me a 6.2% crit rate along with the 10.9% crit damage. Well, whereas the others are not that good, and some might be good, but they are 4 stars. This one is the best at the moment. And I do not have a constellation on my Keqing because she's pretty hard to pull, and I feel really lucky to have her right now. So, how to build her talents? One thing I want you to know is that if you can max out her normal attack first, then it's good, because you'll be using that a shit ton of times, like all the time. So you want that talent to be as high as possible so she deals more DPS in total, because she doesn't play those high damage, let's say like Mona or Klee, but she plays attack speed, and by doing that, the more she hits, the more damage she deals. And her elemental skill, which is the Stellar Restoration, this is what makes her attacks electro. If you only just E to an enemy, it'll only deal a small amount of area of effect. But if you press your E, your elemental skill, twice, it'll make your blade become electric. And that way your attacks will all be electric. That is one reason why you want to have an electro damage bonus if possible, and not just physical. But if you do want to play physical with her, then make sure not to use your elemental skill twice, because it'll make her attacks elemental. That way your DPS will be lower than how it should be. And yeah, so these are the skill attributes for Stellar Restoration at level 5. So moving on, we're gonna have the Starward Sword, which is her elemental burst. This is one reason why I do not recommend energy recharge on her at the moment, because she has a really low amount of energy cost on her elemental burst, along with the short cooldown. But if you have a high energy recharge, it'll be recharged before your cooldown even settles, so it's not really that effective just to wait your cooldown. If you can switch that energy recharge to a damage, it's even better. So as you can see, this is why I told you not to worry if you have a not that high of a crit rate, like let's say 35, because whenever you use her elemental burst, it gives you a 15% bonus crit rate and also an additional 15% energy recharge. This is one reason why energy recharge is not really important on her, and you want to focus more on her crit, her electro damage, and her attack. And by the way, Thundering Pendants is when you press her elemental skill twice. So yeah, I'm gonna demonstrate her a little bit before I have more showcase on her. This is when you hold her E. You can target her E, and that way, if you just leave it that way, it will just deal a small AoE damage. But on the other hand, if you press your elemental skill twice, let's say this, and press it again, it'll trigger your Thundering Penance, her passive ability, which makes her attack all electro. Although it's just a short amount of time, as you can see the cooldown is already back, so you can spam it again. And that is why having an electro damage bonus is really effective on her. Now I'm gonna explain what I meant earlier by Changyan. Because every time you E with Changyan, it makes all attacks ice, like even Keqing's. And even though you press your elemental skill twice, your attacks will still be ice damage. So that is why I have an attack goblet on my Keqing instead of an electro damage goblet, because I use both of them in the Abyssal Moonspire. This is the main reason why I use the attack goblet instead of electro damage goblet, because that's because of this. At floor 11, it says it gives you a 75% electro damage bonus, but at the same time, most of the enemies are electro slimes, which are immune. So I have Changyan at my party, and that way Keqing still deals a very high amount of damage, even though it's an ice elemental damage. And at the same time, if there aren't any elemental skill from Changyan, her physical damage will also still be dealing a high amount of damage. You can see like 4k, 3k, 5k, even 5k. Okay, one thing to note is that you don't want to play the 5-hit combos. You want to go to 4 and then do a charge attack. I've been testing her a lot, and I find this to be the most effective way to be playing her base attack combos. Another thing I meant by having her as a front line because of her black sword is because of that 60% heal bonus you get every time you crit. Just as you see in the video, it gives her 1000 HP just because she crits, and it happens 60% of the time, so it's really effective as long as you can dodge properly, and the area doesn't have any DOT. She can basically handle herself on her own, and she doesn't really need that much of a healer. But to even make her more effective, you can have her a support DPS. If you're also wondering how is she against elite bosses, well, the first clip explains that already. And how is she against small bosses? Well, I can just demonstrate you right now. She melts them very easily. And as you can see, I'm dealing 1600 per slash. It's because of the Abyss effects. It gives me an additional 120% crit damage bonus. But it's still achievable if you have Bennett or Mona on your team. I can deal around 1400 damage per slash, and for her last elemental burst slash, she deals around 10 to 12k. So it just depends on how you build your team. That way she can be more and more effective. And this is pretty much the balanced build of my Keqing that's using a high amount of crit, high attack, and also an additional electro damage bonus. And at the same time, it's hard to pull Keqing right now. I consider myself really lucky to have her right now, because she's a really good DPS. At the same time, she's fun and awesome. Anyways, that is all for my build. I hope you guys like it. If there are suggestions or you want to ask something, just write it down in the comments below. But yeah, don't forget to like, leave a comment, and subscribe. Thanks.